Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says attacks cast doubt on China's Pak projects. The article here is speaking about China-Pakistan economic corridor. As shown in the image, the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir, now a union territory, is an integral part of India. The image that we have shown is only for the representational purposes. So Jammu and Kashmir is a part of India. The entire state, now a union territory, is part of India and will remain so for eternity. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. We have the China-Pakistan economic corridor. This is part of the One Belt One Road initiative of the Chinese program. What is this China-Pakistan economic corridor? Basically, there will be development of infrastructure projects. The infrastructural projects will include both the railways, the highways as well as other infrastructural projects. Where will it start? As part of the CPEC program, it will start at Kashgar in China and it will end in Gwadar port, which is in Pakistan. So this is the lane that it is passing through. So basically this will be an infrastructural developmental project initiated by China in Pakistan, but this also passes through the Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Since the POK is also an integral part of India, which is currently occupied by Pakistan, India in the previous instances has opposed this project as well. What is the current article all about? We have seen that this particular project is an infrastructural project. As a result, what you will have is people employed to work in this project. So as a result, as you have seen in multiple other countries as well, wherever China continues to conduct an operation, it will employ its workers. So what is happening in this case? The CPEC is a project of China. It is being executed in Pakistan. Currently, there are these Chinese workers who are working as part of the CPEC project. One of the projects that was being executed in the Gwadar port is the East Bay Expressway project. But what has happened in the present situation? They were working in this project. There was a suicide bomber that took place. Two children were killed. One Chinese worker was also injured during this project execution. This is not the first time that such an attempt has been executed against the Chinese workers. Previously as well, there have been attempts as well. One such example was the July 4th targeting of the Chinese workers at the Dasu hydropower project. So what is happening here? This is a project executed by China in Pakistan where you have the Chinese employees who are working in Pakistan, and as a result there are few people who are going against the Chinese workers, and in fact some of them have passed away as well. So in this particular backdrop, China has responded. It has asked Pakistan to take up this particular action, know who the perpetrators of the crime is, ensure that those wounded in all these incidences are provided all hospital care immediately, and it has also asked the Pakistan government to investigate as soon as possible, punish the perpetrators and make sure that similar incidents does not happen in the near future. This happens to be the response of China. Now the question is, what will be the impact on this project? There are firms, that is the Chinese firms, who are working on this project. They are employing their employees as well. Since their employees are getting killed in this clash between the Pakistani people as well as the Chinese workers, they say that they require safety during this process, and as a result what we will see is a delay in the execution of the project. And when there is delay, it means the work gets postponed, and as a result the cost of the project will also increase as well. So the Chinese workers, the Chinese firms are skeptical about the safety provided by the Pakistani authorities, and as a result they are requesting the Chinese authorities to put a word to the Pakistan authorities so that this delay and cost does not happen over a period of time. Also remember, this project also has a larger ramifications for Pakistan. Let me give you some of the examples to explain what would happen to Pakistan. We have the examples right in front of us in the form of Sri Lanka, and there are other examples from the African countries as well. Whenever there is a project that is executed by the Chinese, what would happen? The employees ideally should be from the home country, that is from the country wherever this project is executed. If it goes to Sri Lanka, if it is executing a project, who should be the people working on it? It has to be the Sri Lankan citizens. If it is going to the African countries, who should be the workers in this particular project? It has to be the African countries and its people. But what happens with China is whenever it visits a particular country, that country, the native citizens are not employed in this work, but instead the Chinese workers work on all these projects. So ideally, it should have created a livelihood mechanism, created an employment opportunities whereby they would be able to sustain in that particular area. But since it is a Chinese project, they get the Chinese worker into this particular area. There is no employment generation, there is no livelihood generation that is happening. As a result, the people in this particular locality may go against the Chinese working in this region. Similarly, in the Hambantota port that was happening in Sri Lanka, Chinese workers were employed. In African countries where China is executing infrastructural projects, Chinese workers were employed, which means the local employment and livelihood means and mechanisms were not generated. As a result, people went against the Chinese. Similarly, this could have happened in Pakistan, and as a result, what you see is a clash between the Chinese workers as well as the native citizens. Apart from this, whenever there is a Chinese project that is being executed, you would also feel that there is selling of a proportion of a land to the Chinese. This happened in Hambantota port. Initially, it was given for a lease. They were not able to pay back the money as well. So China has taken over the land in Sri Lanka. It is asking its navy to come down. Other operations are being provided, which means a part of that country is indirectly sold to China. So people are also apprehensive that because China is conducting all these projects, infrastructural projects in Pakistan, apart from the infrastructural projects, it is engaging in agriculture indirectly, in the power sector indirectly. So it means the sovereignty of Pakistan may in the near future may also get compromised, which is the apprehension of the people, which is why there might be a clash between the Pakistan people as well as the Chinese. Added to this, let me give you another example. Where are they constructing? They're constructing in the Gwadar port. So what would happen? There are people who would only live in this particular area, Pakistani people, who would engage in fishing, right? So that will be their livelihood means and mechanism. Because there are Chinese workers who are also working into this area, they are also engaging in fishing as well. So it means that the natives who were earlier able to get the fishing lot were able to engage in livelihood. Their yield is getting dropped as well. Their catch via the fishing is dropping as well. That happens to be another clash when it comes to Pakistani people as well as the workers. That is not all. The responsibility of the attack previously and now has been claimed by the Balochistan Liberation Army. The Balochistan Liberation Army happens to be one of the militant groups. This group is looking for an independent Baloch region, or they want more autonomy in this region. They also believe that there are minerals in their region, and this is exploited both by Pakistan as well as by China. So ideally, whenever there is a project that is being executed, certain minerals that are exploited, who should be the beneficiaries? It has to be the Baloch people, but instead they say they are exploiting the mineral resources, taking away the mineral resources and not being given to the people in this region. So there is little practical benefit for the local populations, and as a result there is no trickle down of these developmental projects to the people in this region. So why would not the people fight against this project? And as a result, what we see is that this can boil down to friction between the people in that region and at the same time the Chinese workers as well. There have been talks with the Chinese authorities and the Pakistani authorities as well. As of now, the protection and the security is being given by the Pakistani military as well as the Pakistani police forces. But in the past, the Chinese have also employed their soldiers into the areas of Gwadar as well as in the CPC, which means ideally the soldiers who were supposed to protect Pakistan are the Pakistani soldiers. Instead, you have the Chinese soldiers coming up to Pakistan taking care of their people. What does this signify is another question. So basically, this means that Pakistan in the near future, because it is not able to work efficiently and has taken loans executing the project by the Chinese worker, may become a vassal state of China, say the political commentators. After all these incidents have occurred, Pakistan, in what could be a bizarre and an absurd argument, has put it forward on India, and India has rubbished this as absurd and yet another attempt by Pakistan to malign the image of India in a bid to deflect international affection. We all know for the fact that Pakistan is a place which is known for manufacturing terrorist hotspots. Now, if this country says and tries to malign India, who would believe it? It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says power play. The article here is speaking about the draft electricity amendment bill of 2021. Before we understand what this legislation or the bill is all about, we have to have a basic idea about electricity. Electricity is a concurrent subject in India, which means both the central government and the state governments are responsible for the development of the electric sector. When it comes to our country, we have about 5 electrical regions, which means we have the northern region, we have the northeast region, we have the eastern region, we have the western region, we also have the southern region. This can be very important when it comes to the preliminary examination. The Indian power sector also has an electricity supply chain. How is it divided? It is divided into three different segments. One is what is called as the electricity generation, then we have the transmission, finally what we have is the distribution. So what we have is a three segmental division. The three segmental division includes generation, transmission and followed by distribution. So what is this generation unit? We have different sources. One is the conventional source, the other is the non-conventional source. What are the conventional sources? We have the generation of electricity from coal, natural gas, hydro, nuclear power. All those are part of the conventional sources. Then we have the non-conventional sources. What are these non-conventional sources? Let's say for example the wind, the solar energy, or we produce energy from the domestic waste. These are nothing but the non-conventional sources. So generation is nothing but generating the electricity from the main core centers. That is what is generation. The second part of the electricity supply chain happens to be the transmission. What is this transmission? This is acting as a bridge between the generation unit as well as the distribution unit. So the second unit, which is acting as a bridge between two other components in the electricity supply chain, is what is called as the transmission. Third, what we have is the power distribution system. This happens to be the last stage of the electricity sector, where the power that is generated at the generation stations will be transmitted by the transmission stations and ultimately it will reach the distribution companies. So the distribution sector consists of the power distribution companies, which are also called as the DISCOMs, which ultimately supply these power energy systems to the consumers, to the industries, to the agriculture as well as the domestic unit. So when it comes to the electricity supply chain, we have three different segments which work together, and finally it is the DISCOMs or the distribution companies which enable such that the power is distributed to the consumers as well as to the industry units. What is the importance of power? This happens to be the most critical component of infrastructure, that which is required for the commercial growth and development of the country, and at the same time for every other segment and sector to develop, what we require is the power. So the power happens to be one of the key infrastructural developmental projects that has to be executed in India. Now the government of India has introduced this legislation. Why? why has the government introduced this legislation? That is because according to the government of India, the major problem is with the distribution companies. This happens to be the third leg of the electricity supply chain. This is where the problem is. What is the problem? 36 out of the 56 discoms reported an aggregated losses of around 32,900 crores. Ideally, these distribution companies buy the power from the generators via the transmission. So they have to pay them back as well, but their payment is not happening. So there is a greater losses that is banking on the generators as well. Apart from this, the distribution companies will have to be economical as well. They have to improvise on the technology as well, since they have to transmit from the distribution companies to the consumers. There is also losses that they go through during this transmission. One, there is AT&T losses, then there is billing losses, then there is metering losses, and apart from this, there are people who also take the power illegally without getting the permission. There is theft of electricity that happens as well. All this will have to be borne by the distribution companies. In fact, people may not also pay the bill as well, and in such a scenario, all this will fall on the distribution companies. The distribution companies may not be able to pay back the generation units, and as a result, the power sector is going through a greater losses. In order to prevent these losses that are pushed into the electricity supply chain, what the government of India does, it comes up with this particular legislation basically to ensure that there is consumer centricity, promote ease of doing business, enhance the sustainability of the power sector, and also promote green power as well. So the major problem is that the money that has to be going is not happening. There is losses in this particular sector. So this has to be reworked, which is why we have the government of India come up with this introduction of the legislation. What are the details of this bill? What are some of the important provisions of this bill? One of the important provisions of this bill happens to be the delicensing of the power distribution, whereby the entry barriers for the private sector will be completely eliminated, and they can also be part of the distribution companies. As of now, when you look into the distribution companies, most of it are controlled by the state, or in fact there are companies which comply by the rules of the state government, which is why the central government may believe that there are losses in the distribution companies. But what if we open these distribution companies to the private sector? If we open it to the private sector, what we will have is more competition, more private players will step into the distribution companies business, and as a result, the losses can be comparatively reduced. Since there are only few companies right now, there are lot number of losses. They're completely under the control of the state governments in many cases, and as a result, if we have to break down the losses, what we require is more competition. So the barriers that are present, let's eliminate these barriers so that the private companies step in. We have more competition. Consumers have the option to select these distribution companies, and ultimately power is provided to the consumers. So this will remove all the barriers for the private players, thereby creating the competition in the segment, and ultimately they will have multiple service providers to choose from. This happens to be the most important provision in this particular legislation. But what is the major problem here? The major problem is that this is against the federal structure. How? As we discussed, these are the distribution companies which are mostly under the control of the state government. If the central government is coming up with particular legislation without taking the consent of the state governments, it means it is against the federal structure. Added to this, whenever there is a private player who is becoming a part of the distribution companies, the private players only look at the profits. Where do they get the profits? In the urban areas. So whenever they are working in the urban areas, they would be able to make a lot of profit. But what about the rural areas? So in rural areas, it will be the state, that is the state government, who have to bear a lot of losses, and as a result, one, it is against the federal structure. Second, the private players enter into the urban areas. In the rural areas, they will not go. So until now, the state governments and the distribution companies were able to manage because they used to generate profits in the urban areas. They were somehow able to manage it in the rural areas. Now, if the urban areas are being captured by these private players, only losses may have to be borne by the distribution companies which are under the tag of the state governments. Added to this, the farmers are also apprehensive that as of now there are subsidies and free power supply that are given to the farmers. But if this bill comes into regulation, the farmers are in an apprehension that the free supply of electricity may not be given by the government. This is just an apprehension. The government has spoken nothing about the free supply or the subsidy, but they are in an apprehension, in a fear, in a phobia that in the near future the central government or the state governments may withdraw the subsidized or the free supply, and as a result you also have the farming community which is going against this legislation. So the Kerala Assembly has unanimously passed a resolution urging the central government to withdraw the bill. West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee has written a letter to the Prime Minister of India where she has put out her opposition, and you also have farmers from Karnataka who have put out the demonstrations against this draft legislation. So what is the way forward? If this particular legislation has to come into reality, what we require is a broad consensus and understanding, and this is where the central government will have to take the state governments into confidence and ultimately remove all the apprehensions that the state government has and the farming community has. Only when there is consensus building that happens, we would be able to reduce the distribution company losses, says this article. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, will changes in AERA Act help smaller airports? The article here is speaking about Airports Economic Regulatory Authority of India Bill 2021. This intends to amend the Airports Economic Regulatory Authority of India Act of 2008. In the original law, it led to the establishment of one of the regulatory bodies called as the Airport Economic Regulatory Authority. What is the function of this authority? Basically, there are different operations that take place in an airport. There is parking of the aircraft that take place. Then there is aeronautical services that are given as well. There has to be one authority which would be able to impose tariffs as well. They should be able to recommend tariffs as well. They should be able to cater to the service fee as well. They should be able to understand the air traffic management. All of these functions are performed by the Airport Economic Regulatory Authority. When did it come? It came into existence because of the Airports Economic Regulatory Authority of India Act of 2008. When you look into the original act, that is of 2008, it has defined major ports. What is a major port? It refers to one that has an annual passenger traffic of more than 35 lakh or any other airport specified by the central government. It has two conditions. One, there has to be an annual traffic of about 35 lakh, which means that people have to move in and out of this airport. The traffic, that is the people moving in this airport, has to be 35 lakh and more than that. Or the government in the situation can also release a notification declaring one of the airport as the major airport. What is this bill saying? The amendment proposes to replace the phrase any other airport as given in the original act with group of airports, which means the central government now will have the power not only to declare one single airport as a major airport by notification, but instead a large number of group of airports to be brought into the picture of major airport. Now the question is, why does this become important? When you look into the major airport, lot of activities happen in this particular place. So there will be large scale investments as well. Private companies will come and invest in this particular major airport, but they were not investing in the small airports. Now the central government has the provision where it would also be able to declare those airports which are currently not acting as major airports. So if they are declared as major airports, then the government is envisioning that there'll be more private investments as well. So whenever there is more private investments, it also means that airport will also develop, and at the same time what we will have is more number of small airports which will develop over a period of time. This will encourage development of the smaller airports. This will lead to development of tier 2 and tier 3 cities airports as well. So the government here will have to make sure that the interest of the government and the interest of the private are both taken into picture, so that this becomes a successful program. This once again will be explained as part of the economy this week. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, are oil bonds to blame for high fuel prices? This will be explained as part of the economy this week in our economic sessions. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. Periodic attack on the Chinese worker in Pakistan paints a grim picture for the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor project. Discuss the possible reasons for such attacks. Critically examine the draft electricity amendment bill of 2021. So please write all your answers on the comment section. Peer review. Do give positive feedback to your friends' answers. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.